was a special agent in charge, and I forget the guy's name in New Orleans, not to give Garrison anything.
Hoover sent out a message to all special agents in charge in all the FBI field offices, especially the special agent in charge in New Orleans. I think it was Robert Reitmeyer at the time, but it might have been the other fellow, I can't remember. And it said, we have the memo, give Garrison nothing. Now, Garrison's office was shocked because previously the Orleans Parish Police and so forth always had cooperation from the FBI, but not on this. And so even when people came to the FBI in New Orleans and said they had information about death threats to Jim Garrison, the FBI office didn't tell the Orleans Parish District Attorney's Office about those. Was really, and then Hoover started telling his special agents to say Garrison is a nut. And I asked Warren DeBruys myself, I said, gee, how come you people didn't help Jim Garrison? He really needed your help. And DeBruys said to me the same line that Hoover was giving out at the time. He was a nut. Hoover was involved in the cover-up from the very beginning. And we can see that in the behavior of the FBI. It was amazing to people at the East Louisiana State Hospital at Jackson that FBI agents, the week after the assassination, were already up there asking about Oswald's visit to the hospital. How did they know that? It seems pretty clear that the FBI had foreknowledge of the assassination of President Kennedy. And Richard K. Snagel said that he'd written a letter to Hoover, not to be recovered, of course, saying that something was going on, that President Kennedy was going to be assassinated.
Pay information that hasn't been released of Oswald that could possibly prove that he was being paid by intelligence agencies, isn't there?
Oswald was paid by the FBI in New Orleans. I think that's pretty clearly established. There's no question about it. Because when Oswald was arrested on Canal Street, and Francis Martello did call the FBI field office with the orders by Oswald, tell them you have Lee Oswald in custody. The young clerk who answered the telephone, William Walter, then told, it was at night, I think weekend, there was only one FBI special agent there, Quigley, and he said, let's look up this guy. He didn't know who Oswald was, and they start looking through the files, and they find all kinds of files about Oswald up there, and then there were some files that were even in the locked security filing cabinet of the special agent in charge. Security files. And on the jacket of the file, the cover, it said Lee Oswald, Warren DeBruys. So certainly, and I think that it's been pretty well established that Oswald was paid something like $200 a month from the FBI field office. Not a lot of money, but not nothing. And of course, this is $1963. Jim Garrison believed that Oswald didn't even fire a shot. What Jim Garrison noticed was that there were no powder burns on Oswald's cheek, which would have been there had he fired that particular weapon. Vincent Bugliosi in his new book says the only weapon discovered up there on the so-called sniper's nest was that Mannlicher Carcana. That's not true. There was a Mauser that was discovered too that somehow disappears. So I don't think that President Kennedy was killed by that rickety old gun, and I'm not even certain, of course we don't know for sure, but whether Oswald even fired a shot. I think it's very clear that Oswald had no idea that he was involved in, well, if he had no idea, then he couldn't have fired a shot, could he? Because what about Oswald? He was clearly perplexed when Oswald was interviewed by the press after he was arrested by the Dallas police and said, I'm a patsy. This means I don't know what's going on here. It means I can't imagine what this is about. It doesn't sound like the man who just fired whatever number of shots over there.
Do you think it was weird that Allen Dulles, who was in effect fired by Kennedy after the Bad Pigs, was appointed to the Warren Commission?
It's part of the cover-up that Allen Dulles was was leading the Warren Commission. It's pretty clear that if you look at the composition, you had people who were loyal to Lyndon Johnson, John Sherman Cooper, and Hale Boggs, and Southerners, of course. And then you have Allen Dulles and John McCloy, who's that like representative of the military-industrial complex. And who else do we have? I can't recall right now all the names of the... Gerald Ford, who was in charge of, for the House, oversight of the intelligence agencies.
Right.
So we have people very loyal to the intelligence community here, led by the disgruntled, if you like, Allen Dulles, whom President Kennedy fired.
And who was the mayor of Dallas?
The mayor of Dallas at the time was the brother of Allen Dulles' second in command, General Charles Cabell. And Jim Garrison always made a big thing of that. Look at that connection, really. And there you can see there were strong connections between all of these people, so many people involved. And the idea that on their deathbeds they would suddenly tell is so infantile, at the Grimm's fairy tale time. Richard Helms, as the New York Times said in the obituary, that died with his secrets. So did David Atlee Phillips, despite that last-minute confession. Oh, he was there, but he certainly doesn't go into... David Atlee Phillips actually, in a digression, wrote a novel, a roman à clef, in which he describes Oswald as an intelligence operative and himself, figure that represented himself, being one of his handlers. So whatever that means, but it was very different. I was not able to get the full manuscript of this unpublished novel by David Atlee Phillips. A lawyer who was involved in some lawsuit managed to see some of it and copy as much of it as he could, and so we have quite a bit of it, but we certainly don't have the manuscript. And I asked a person, a former reporter who's close to the Phillips family, if I could see it, and the answer was just no.
Do you have any comment about any of that